The Anthony Joshua redemption arc continues. And listen, I backed AJ to win this fight, but I didn't think it would be this explosive or this clinical because Francis Ngannou had gone above and beyond what we thought he was capable of in his fight with Tyson Fury. As not only did he drop the WBC World Heavyweight Champion in his boxing debut, but he showed a lot more composure than I myself had thought he would be capable of in that fight. The Sugar Hill trained version of Tyson Fury has obviously adapted his game and he's got a lot better at his inside fighting. He's often able in these more recent fights to be able to impose his physical attributes upon his opponent. So being that he tried to do that against Francis Ngannou, and Francis Ngannou pretty much just nullified Fury trying to do that, it massively, massively impressed me. Also, usually these MMA guys can be very, very reactionary to your feints and your twitches, and if there is one man that knows how to feint and how to twitch, it is the Gypsy King. So when we saw him try to do that to set traps for Francis Ngannou to inevitably walk into, and then we saw that Francis Ngannou didn't react, he didn't take the bait, we couldn't help but be impressed, and it made us feel like we were looking at someone who was adapting to boxing a lot better and a lot more comfortably than some of his previous MMA counterparts had. And because of all that, I just didn't see this one being a short night's work for Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, or any other man for that matter, was always going to have an easier night's work against Francis Ngannou than Tyson Fury had, in my opinion. I believe that Tyson Fury almost went in blind to that fight, whereas Anthony Joshua and Ben Davidson had 10 rounds of footage that they could look back on now, they could analyse, they could pick holes in, and ultimately develop a game plan around when it came to beating Francis Ngannou. And another thing they had is, off the back of the Tyson Fury fight, they now very much knew what Francis Ngannou's ambitions in boxing would be. This was now a legitimate live dog with a chance of competing. And I could be wrong, I'm sure many of you will just think, oh, he's sticking up for Fury, and if that's your opinion, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, after Tyson Fury going the 10 rounds of Francis Ngannou, I do believe that the next man to face the former UFC heavyweight world champion was always going to have an easier job. Easier, not easy, because I did think that AJ was going to have to come through some sticky patches in this fight, and I thought that inevitably he might stop Ngannou down the stretch, or more than likely go to points with Francis Ngannou. But that is not what happened. Of Takam when Chisora dropped in that time. It's like you get back up, but you're just there waiting to get it by the right hand. Big respect between the two. And there you have it. Pretty much punch-perfect performance from AJ. And for me, this is the best version of AJ at this second right now. Because when Joshua won his world title back off of Andy Ruiz, we heard AJ, Eddie Hearn, anyone that would listen saying that this was now AJ 2.0. But that was not AJ 2.0 for me. This is AJ 2.0. Listen, you can't underplay the fact that AJ avenging his loss over Andy Ruiz Jr. was a huge achievement. But fuck me, Andy Ruiz didn't half make it easy for him, did he? He turned up to Saudi for that rematch looking like he had just eaten AJ rather than beaten AJ. And if Andy Ruiz had been in a bit better shape, a little bit lighter, and definitely with a better mindset, better mentality and focus going into that fight, I think we could have seen him give Anthony Joshua more problems in that rematch than we ultimately did see. And from that fight onwards, I think we often saw a bit of a worrying trend emerging when we were watching Anthony Joshua, in terms of it looked like he was a little bit gun shy. It almost looked like he was lacking a bit of self-assurance and self-confidence, and it looked like he had forgotten what had made him so good in the first place. Now, this is the 4th win in a row for AJ since his back-to-back losses to Alexander Usyk, but I've got to be honest, the first 2 of them were pretty underwhelming, man. Franklin was better than we thought he was going to be, but at the same time, look, he's still not a top 20 guy, is he, you know? Helenius, when you think back to that fight, the knockout is always going to live long in your memory, but remember, for the 6 odd rounds before that knockout, that fight was fucking boring. And again, AJ looked very hesitant to pull the trigger on Robert Helenius. So realistically, it's the last 2 fights, isn't it, that have given us the answers that I think we all wanted when it came to the question, where is AJ at right now? And who do we have to thank for that? Ben Davidson. Mate, the universe works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? Like, Do you remember when Billy Joe Saunders fought Akavov at Paisley Leisure Centre in 2016? No, of course you fucking don't, because you've probably got a life, haven't you? But if you did remember that, you'd remember that Billy Joe Saunders, fresh off the back of winning his world title against Andy Lee, laboured to a close points decision in a very boring fight against an unknown European fighter. And when you see an underwhelming fight like that, as boxing fans, we all do the same fucking thing, don't we? We always look to where we can point the finger, what went wrong. And the finger that night was very firmly pointed at Billy Joe Saunders' corner, because it was out with the old and in with the new. He had got rid of renowned boxing trainer who had a lot of credit in the bank, a lot of people respected him in Jimmy Tibbs, and he had brought in a very, very younger than myself, personal trainer to be giving him instructions in the corner in between rounds in that fight. No known experienced training fighters, no one had ever heard of him, and that man was a very young Ben Davidson. So to see the journey he's come on since then is just absolutely crazy, isn't it? Because let's have it right. It seems like at the moment everything Ben touches just turns to gold, doesn't it? Every fighter that he works with goes from strength to strength. Upset wins. They pull off wins and runs of victories that we didn't think they could. And when all is said and done, I do think that this link up between AJ and Ben Davidson could be one of the most important factors in how we view Anthony Joshua's legacy. Now, younger trainers like a Ben Davidson, like a Shane McGuigan, might not have the same amount of acquired experience as your older guys, like maybe a Freddie Roach or an Abel Sanchez or someone like that. But what they do have that will benefit them more than those guys is they're closer to the age of the fighters that they're working with. And because of that, if they are able to do that, they're going to be able to relate to their fighters and sort of tap into the psychology of their fighters maybe a lot better than some of the older guys might be able to. Because believe me, as someone that gets in a ring and fights myself, albeit at a much lower level than the ones that we talk about on this channel, a trainer being able to tap into a fighter's mental state can be just as important as what that trainer does for the fighter from a technical standpoint, you know. And I think that this is the case with AJ at the moment. I definitely think that Ben's ability to simplify the psychology of boxing is helping Joshua massively now. So what next for AJ? Well, the obvious thing to do would be to sit out and wait for the winner of the undisputed fight between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. Now, that bout does have a rematch clause in it, but Turkey and the boys over in Saudi don't really give a fuck about rematch clauses today. I think that they're looking at that and going, do you know what? We'll be able to pay so much step-aside money for the loser of that fight, or the winner, however it works. Whoever wants the rematch, basically, they'll pay them off. They'll say, you sit tight there, that's fine. We'll ride out the storm over here, and we'll give you a call when everyone's dusted up with this fight. So I think that if they were to do that, then obviously that's the option, isn't it? If not, the most realistic option for Anthony Joshua would be Hrgovic. We've obviously heard that Hrgovic could be in line to fight for a vacant IBF belt once that's stripped from the winner of Usyk and Fury. However, that was supposed to have been stripped already, but then that fight, the undisputed fight, was pushed back by a couple of months. So I suppose the inevitable stripping will be pushed back, but it's all a mess, isn't it? It's all a mess. But basically what I want is Joshua against Fury, ideally. Because let's be honest, none of these guys are getting any fucking younger, are they? And despite the fact that we're now, with the emergence of Saudis coming into boxing, having a bit of an Indian summer, let's call it, in this heavyweight division, AJ, Fury, Usyk, they're all the wrong side of 30 now, aren't they? So if we are to see them fight, and most importantly for me here, if we are to see them fight when we would still class them as at least being very close to their prime, it needs to happen sooner rather than later. But what about the loser of last night's fight, Francis Ngannou? What should he do next? And is that his boxing journey over now? Well, is he a fringe world level guy in boxing? Is he a European level guy in boxing? Is he a gatekeeper in heavyweight boxing? And would that be massively disrespectful for me to call him a potential gatekeeper? You know, would that gatekeeper status be beneath Francis Ngannou considering what he's done in the MMA world? Francis Ngannou very recently, I think it was, in a podcast, admitted that for his last fight in the UFC, he got paid around $600,000, which is, you know, just shy of £500,000 or something like that. And that's off the back of being the heavyweight champion, probably the biggest name in the promotion at the time, I would imagine. So that means after becoming the best in his respective martial art, he's only earning, what, £500,000 in the UFC. But then when you look at boxing, and I mentioned gatekeepers there, let's look at Del Boy, Derek Chisora. He earned $4.5 million to fight Usyk. I'm pretty sure he earned $4.5 million to fight Tyson Fury in their trilogy at Wembley, you know? The numbers are just different, aren't they? Like, Joseph Parker last night, he's boxed on the undercard. Reportedly, he earned around $2 million, as did Zhilei Zhang. So do you see where I'm going with this? If Ngannou was to come back on another Saudi card towards the end of the year, yeah, alright, he's not going to earn as much as he's earned in his last 2 boxing matches, but he'll still earn at least double what he's going to earn in the UFC, wouldn't he? And for that reason, it makes it a no-brainer for me for Francis Ngannou to stay in boxing, you know? Definitively tells us that Francis Ngannou has nothing to offer in boxing, and he can't mix it with the likes of Chisora, Ajit Caballero, Dillian White coming back, you know. I think that he should roll the dice again if he wants to carry on. Roll the dice again with one of these guys, and if you beat them, you'll probably get paid, as I say, double what you're going to get paid in the UFC, and then you're in line for another big payday. The wheel keeps on turning, whereas it seems like under Dana White, the progression's not really there. So do you want to return to MMA? Another thing as well is, listen, I love boxing. I think it's the best martial art form. But I'm not in denial here, right? Getting punched in the face is easier than getting kicked and kneed in the head. So if you're looking about the risk against the reward when it comes to the pay packet at the end of it, again, it's just a no-brainer, innit? It's a tap-in. Stay in boxing and carry on doing your thing. I think Francis Ngannou can be better than he showed last night. I think that, oh man, or maybe he doesn't do either. Maybe he just sails off into the sunset because, let's be honest, he's made a fair chunk over the last few fights, hasn't he? People, I just wanted to get out a video, give my reaction to this fight. I am in the studio on Monday with my friend Brian, the True Geordie, and we're going to talk all of the fallout from boxing. We're going to talk about my upcoming Misfits fight. I actually fly to Nashville on Monday next week. So not this Monday, tomorrow, you know, the week after that, which is mad, man. I never ever thought that I would be boxing in America. There was a time when I never thought I'd box again. So we're going to have a little chat about that, me and Brian. We're going to talk about Tyson Fury. We're going to talk about whether AJ's now ahead of him in the rankings. There's so much more news. Boxing's like fucking buses, isn't it? It all comes at once. Not much was happening. Now we got Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, Manny Pacquiao, Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr. apparently fighting Terence Crawford. It's gone fucking nuts, hasn't it? And I'm very, very glad that you guys are here to join me on this journey on my boxing page. I started it like 2 months ago, just hit 10k, so I'm very, very grateful, very humbled by that actually, so thank you very much. If you've made it around to the end of another video, please hit the like button. That helps me out. What helps me out even more is for you to hit the subscribe button. If you really want to go above and beyond, send the video on to someone else. That definitely helps. People, I will see you all in the next one.